Bitcoin was never supposed to survive this long. Governments ignored it. Banks laughed at it. Experts called it dead again and again. And yet today, the same institutions that once attacked Bitcoin are quietly buying it. Not publicly, not loudly, quietly. Why? Because something bigger is happening. For the first time in modern history, the world is beginning to question the system behind money itself. Inflation is rising. Debt keeps expanding. Currencies keep losing value. And in the middle of all this, Bitcoin keeps doing the same thing it has done since 2009, existing without permission, without control. And now slowly, almost silently, the world may be moving towards something unimaginable, a Bitcoin standard, not tomorrow, not instantly, but step by step. And most people still haven't realized it's already starting. Money is changing. Most people think money is permanent. It isn't. Every major monetary system in history eventually changed. Gold standards collapsed. Currencies were replaced. Financial systems evolved. And now, once again, the system is under pressure. Governments print more money. Debt grows larger every year. And purchasing power quietly disappears. People feel it. Even if they don't fully understand it, something no longer feels stable. And that uncertainty creates one thing: the search for harder money. Why Bitcoin is different? Bitcoin isn't just another asset. It operates differently from everything before it. No central bank controls it. No politician can change its supply. No country owns it. Its rules are fixed. 21 million, no exceptions. That changes everything. Because for the first time, the world has access to an asset that cannot be inflated away. And in a world built on endless money printing, that idea becomes extremely powerful. Institutions already see it. Retail investors still debate whether Bitcoin is real. But institutions moved past that question years ago. Now they're asking something different. How much exposure should we have? That shift matters. Because once major financial players begin treating Bitcoin as a strategic asset, the game changes. ETFs absorb supply. Corporations hold Bitcoin on balance sheets. Funds allocate long-term capital, not because of hype, because they see Bitcoin as protection. The quiet shift happening globally. This isn't only happening in one country. The shift is global. Some governments are exploring Bitcoin reserves. Others are building crypto infrastructure. Entire financial systems are adapting around digital assets. And while most people still see Bitcoin as speculation, larger players are beginning to see it differently. As monetary infrastructure, that's a completely different narrative. Why the supply matters. Here's what most people still underestimate. Bitcoin is scarce, truly scarce. There will never be more than 21 million coins. And every 4 years, new supply entering the market gets cut in half. Meanwhile, demand keeps growing. Institutions buy, funds accumulate, long-term holders refuse to sell, which creates one dangerous possibility: a supply shock, a moment where demand rises, but available Bitcoin disappears. This doesn't happen overnight. A Bitcoin standard won't appear suddenly. The transition is gradual. First skepticism, then curiosity, then adoption. That's how every major technological shift works. The internet followed the same path. Smartphones did too. At first, people laugh. Then eventually, they realize the system is already changing around them. And by then, it's too late to call it temporary. The resistance will grow. If Bitcoin continues growing, resistance will grow too. Because Bitcoin challenges something massive: control over money. And systems rarely give up control easily. There will be fear, regulation, negative headlines. But despite all of that, Bitcoin keeps surviving. Every cycle, every attack, every collapse prediction. And the longer it survives, the stronger the narrative becomes. The real question: at this point, the debate is slowly changing. The question is no longer, will Bitcoin survive? The real question becoming, what happens if it does? What happens if Bitcoin continues growing for another decade? What happens if institutions continue accumulating? What happens if countries begin competing for supply? Because if that future becomes reality, then this moment right now may look very different in hindsight. The psychology of early adoption. Most people don't recognize transformation while it's happening. They only recognize it after it becomes obvious. That's the pattern. When the internet appeared, people dismissed it. When smartphones arrived, they looked unnecessary. Bitcoin is following the same psychological cycle. Right now, it still feels uncertain, risky, volatile, easy to doubt, but major shifts always feel that way in the beginning, because if everyone already believed in it, the opportunity would already be gone. Why scarcity changes? Everything, the modern financial system is built on expansion. More debt, more printing, more liquidity. Bitcoin works in the opposite direction. Fixed supply, predictable issuance, absolute scarcity. That creates a completely different economic dynamic. Because when something is both limited and globally accessible, its value behaves differently over time. And the world is slowly beginning to understand that, not emotionally, financially. The new digital gold rush. But this time, the gold rush looks different. No mines, no shovels, no physical land, just code, networks, and ownership of digital scarcity. And unlike previous financial revolutions, this one happens in public. Every transaction visible, every supply update known, every movement tracked in real time. That transparency changes trust itself, because for the first time, people don't need to trust institutions. They can verify the system independently. What happens when supply runs thin? Here's where things become interesting. Most Bitcoin hasn't moved in years. Long-term holders continue accumulating. Institutions continue buying. New supply continues shrinking. And yet demand keeps expanding globally. That imbalance creates pressure. Not instantly, gradually, until one day, there just simply isn't enough available supply left at current prices. And when markets realize scarcity is real, repricing happens fast. Much faster than most people expect. Why countries may eventually compete for Bitcoin. At first, Bitcoin was ignored by governments, then criticized. Now, quietly monitored. Because if Bitcoin becomes globally recognized collateral or reserve infrastructure, countries may eventually face a new reality, competing for ownership. Not because they love Bitcoin, but because they cannot afford to fall behind if others adopt it first. That's how strategic assets work, and Bitcoin is slowly entering that conversation. The shift most people won't notice. The biggest changes in history rarely feel dramatic in real time. They happen slowly, quietly, then suddenly, the world looks different. And that may be exactly what's happening here. Because while most people still see Bitcoin as a speculative trade, larger systems are beginning to treat it as something else entirely, a long-term monetary asset. And once that perception fully changes, everything around it changes too. Abrupt closing Bitcoin was created during a financial crisis. At the time, almost nobody paid attention. Now, years later, governments are watching it, institutions are buying it, and the financial system is slowly adapting around it. Not because everyone suddenly believes in Bitcoin, but because the world is beginning to lose confidence in everything else. And that changes the conversation completely. This is no longer just about technology, or investing, or price. This is about trust, about money, about what the future financial system could eventually become. Maybe the transition takes years, maybe decades, but history shows something important. The biggest shifts always look impossible until they become inevitable. And if the world really is moving toward a Bitcoin standard, then one day people may look back at this moment and realize the transition had already started. Most people just didn't notice it yet.